Coming up Sunday afternoon in Las Vegas, Nevada, it's the second edition of the Khalil Mack Bowl. Hooray! As the Chicago Bears travel out west to take on John Gruden's Las Vegas Raiders. You already know you're going to see plenty of talk and conversation about who won the Khalil Mack trade, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But let's take a look at where these two teams sit heading into this Week 5 matchup. The Chicago Bears are exactly where you probably expect them to be. If you looked at the schedule before the season started, you might have envisioned they were going to be 2-2. And you were hoping that Justin Fields would have made all 4 of those starts, but at least made a couple of them. Well, that's where we're at. The Bears are 2-2, and Justin Fields has made 2 starts. One nightmare of one against Cleveland. Thank you, Matt Nagy, for your stupidity, numbskullery, and incompetence. And then one with Bill Lazor as a play caller Sunday against the Lions, where you saw some hope for the future. So, Bears sitting at 2-2 in second place in the NFC North. Beat Detroit last week 24-14. As I referenced a moment ago, Justin Fields looked much better, much more comfortable in the Bears offense in week 2. You look at that performance and you say, hey, that's a harbinger of potentially some good things to come. You saw the Bears do a better job of protecting him, do a better job of establishing the run and consistently sticking with the run, and utilize Justin Fields' athletic talents, especially with his arm, to stretch the field and hit some big plays in the passing game. What a novel fucking concept. And then the big surprise, I think, to honestly a lot of Bears fans, is Matt Nagy finally announced that Justin Fields is indeed the starter for the Chicago Bears going forward. It's like, finally, and we know that's not your decision, and now that the decision's been made, this asshat should be fired. The one decision he had to get right this year, he got woefully wrong. He should not be around anymore. Why would you want to give him 13 more games to screw up Justin Fields? But anyways, here's where you sit. Bears in that typical mediocrity of the McCaskey way, 2-2 record through 4 games, and some key injuries heading into this matchup. David Montgomery likely not to play. Akeem Hicks, it sounds like, could potentially not play as well. Khalil Mack is injured, wasn't practicing early in the week, but was just named a team captain for Sunday, so certainly seems like he'll be playing in some role or capacity. But offensively, this is a team still that's only scored 57 points in 4 games. They're last in the league in passing yards. So while you saw a little bit more reason for excitement in life out of this Bears offense on Sunday, you also have to temper that with the realization that was going up against a winless Lions team with a pretty bad defense. So what do you really make out of that? The defense has been middle of the road. They are getting a lot of pressure. Robert Quinn's been the best player on that defense through 4 weeks. Can't believe I'm saying that. But they are doing a great job of getting pressure, but their tackling's poor, their run defense is mid, and their coverage in the secondary is atrocious. So there are certainly opportunities for the Raiders in their passing game to exploit the Bears secondary on Sunday if they can protect Derek Carr and give him some time. Meanwhile, for the Las Vegas Raiders, they're sitting at 3-1 in a 3-way tie for first in the AFC West. They're coming off of that Monday night loss to the Chargers, so I guess technically not a first because the Chargers had the tiebreaker. But you get the damn point. They're 3-1, 4 games through the season. Derek Carr is leading that Raiders passing attack, which is actually first in the league in yards per game. Probably helped to get a little garbage time yardage in there on the Monday night matchup, but this passing game of the Raiders has looked good this year. The defense is no better than middle of the road, probably a little bit under that, and they certainly did not look very good against the Chargers, got carved up by Justin Herbert in that Chargers offense in the first half on Monday night. And then you look at that secondary being banged up. Damon Arnett, is probably not going to play. Trayvon Mullen, is he going to play? Jonathan Abram is injured, but looks like he might be training to play. Although you look at a guy like Arnett and you say, is that really a loss if he doesn't play? Another one of those Mike Mayock special draft picks, huh? Whoa, shit, my goodness. So, pivotal matchup for both teams if they look at it and say, if you're the Bears, you want to build off of the momentum of last week's win. You want to get Justin Fields a better experience in his second road start. You can wash away some of the thoughts of what happened in week 3 against Cleveland, but also potentially go to 3-2. Meanwhile, the Raiders saying, hey, if we get a win here, can get rid of some of the stank of the Monday night loss, be at 4-1 through 5 weeks. And I think you ask most fan bases in the league, if you could be 4-1 through 5 weeks, would you take it? Most everybody would say abso-fucking-lutely. So it is a big game for both teams, admittedly. And then you've got the narrative, of course, that's going to be talked about, already has been talked about, will be talked about in the next couple of days. I'm certain is going to be brought up several times during the broadcast on Sunday afternoon. It's the whole Khalil Mack trade and the whole storyline about Who actually won the trade? And let's be clear here. Technically, the Bears did. Because in Khalil Mack's first 3 seasons in Chicago, the Bears made the playoffs twice versus none for the Raiders. So when you use that barometer, that metric, they won the trade. Now, that said, neither team really won it. As you could say with the Bears, well, you made the playoffs a couple times with Khalil Mack, but yeah, they're still trying to figure out if they can get a quarterback to be the long-term answer there. And instead of it being Trubisky, it's now Justin Fields, and the jury is still out there. Meanwhile, you look at the Raiders, it's great to get all that draft picks, but it's a very important reminder of the draft picks don't matter if you don't know what the fuck you're doing with them. And even when you have your own draft pick and you take a guy like Clelin Ferrell, 4th overall, like you deserve the shit that you get. You cannot waste those premium picks on average culture players. You need guys that can actually be difference makers, guys that can play. So, in theory, the Raiders could have positioned themselves incredibly well with that Khalil Mack trade to come smelling like roses and come out of this like gangbusters and say, hey, with the Josh Jacobs of the world and so forth, like, it was a great deal combined with the Amari Cooper trade. It was something that helped spawn a new era of Las Vegas Raiders football. But the reality is, it doesn't. And for the Bears, you still don't know if you have the quarterback or not. Some of you might want to believe that it's Justin Fields. The reality is we don't know. So what the fuck do the Bears have to brag about here? It's one of these things that everybody wants to think like they're winners, but they're all losers at the end of the day. So it's about time we stop talking about it. Yes, it's funny to think about the Raiders reached out to the Bears in the offseason and inquired about reacquiring Khalil Mack. I'm sure that was funny. It is funny a little bit, but you know, for the Bears fans that want to sit there and say they won the trade, like, what did you really win? For the Raiders fans that may still hold on to the belief that they won it, you know you did it. You traded away a premier edge defender in the league and really, really screwed the pooch when it came to the approach of what you did with all those draft picks. So you have nothing to brag about at all. And what matters much more is what actually is going to go on in this game Sunday afternoon. So that's what we should be talking about. In terms of the keys to this game for the Chicago Bears, Bill Lazor needs to continue that same approach on offense. Utilize that running game early, even without David Montgomery. Like, if Damian Williams is going to be there, should be a healthy dose of him and Khalil Herbert out of that backfield. Like, the approach does not need to change right now just because you don't have Monty back there. And that sucks. And that's a big loss for this team if he's not able to play and not going to play. Because David Montgomery was easily the best player on the Chicago Bears the first 4 games of this season. If you throw out any other names, you're just trying to troll. You know that's true. And Bears fans know that. Like, Monty's been a beast in year 3 so far. So it sucks that he is out with the knee injury. But you can still continue that same approach on offense. And that's what needs to happen. Lock up Matt Nagy. Take away his Kool-Aid fucking play sheet. Put it strictly in Bill Lazor's hands and let him make the decisions and call the plays. And utilize a similar approach to what you did with Detroit. Because that secondary is vulnerable. They can be had. And especially with some of the injuries, they could potentially be even more had. There's no reason to change the approach that worked on Sunday. You got to find a way to contain Max Crosby. He's the one guy on the edge for this Raiders defense that gives me some pause and gives me some concern, especially going up against these Bears offensive tackles. Like, this is a type of game where Crosby, if you're not careful, could have a couple of sacks. Like, I would dedicate a tight end to helping, like a Cole Kmet, since they don't want to use him in the passing game anyways. You might as well deploy him a lot as a blocker, so be it. Like, it's more important right now to protect Justin Fields because it keeps him upright, keeps him in the rhythm of the game, and also opens up opportunities that can be exploited down the field with Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. Got to contain Max Crosby. And you got to avoid on defense those breakdowns in zone coverage that have been backbreakers at times through the first 4 games. Because if you don't, Darren Waller and Henry Ruggs are going to feast in this game. Potentially Hunter Renfrow as well. You cannot have these same coverage breakdowns and lapses and mental mistakes that you've had. It just cannot continue. At this point in time, I'd rather have the Bears run much more in the terms of man-to-man press coverage. Yeah, you might get beat deep some, but they're getting beat deep all the time in fucking zone anyways. Like, why not get more aggressive? Why not change up the look of the defense a little bit? For the Raiders, you got to get Josh Jacobs going early, assuming he's going to be ready to go and play on Sunday. Like, need a healthy dose of Josh Jacobs in this one. Because if you go back to 2019, in that matchup in London, we got a healthy dose of Josh Jacobs in that game, and it was a big key for the Raiders beating the Bears in that week in London. So you got to get him going on the ground because the Bears are a little susceptible in the running game, and especially if Akeem Hicks doesn't play at all or he's limited in any way. Like we've seen in the past that has impacted and hurt this Bears rushing defense. So opportunities could be there. You got to take some deep shots with Henry Ruggs III as well. Like you're starting to see him become a little bit more of a downfield weapon, and the Bears coverage can be had, definitely, especially with their safeties right now, blowing assignments and so forth. You got to take some shots down the field with Ruggs. Maybe it leads to an interception too, but maybe it leads to a big play or two. Maybe it also leads to a field position changing pass interference penalty. Like, cannot shy away from that. You should be targeting, potentially 4 to 5 looks down the field with Ruggs during this game. And when I say down the field, I'm talking about like 30 plus yards. As the Bears defense can be had there, so go exploit him. And then they got to bring pressure on Justin Fields. Don't just try to get pressure and hope that Max Crosby and Ngakoue and freaking Solomon Thomas in a roll will be enough. Like, bring some heat. The Browns did that. They were very good and selective in terms of when they brought the blitz versus when they were just able to get there with their front four. But the Raiders need to bring the house sometimes, and they need to bring some heat, varied pressures, rattle that offensive line, which therefore can rattle Justin Fields. You do not want Justin Fields to get comfortable, because if he gets comfortable and he gets into a rhythm, it's going to be some problems. If you can get to him early and get him questioning, get him doubting, it's only going to slow down his processing and decision-making process either more, and that's when you're going to have some problems. As I look at this game on Sunday, there is a piece that says, okay, Justin Fields clearly being the better quarterback for the team is now the unquestioned starter. That bodes a little bit better for this Bears team. But you also don't want to look at last week as too much of fool's gold, because at the end of the day, the Lions going to Lions. And against an even somewhat better team, the Bears might have lost that one. We have to be a little realistic about this. The Raiders and their performance on Monday night could be a little concerning, but it's also realizing they came against the Chargers, and the Chargers are no joke, and they've got a legit franchise quarterback, a future elite standard bearer at the position in the league, in Justin Herbert. So, how bad is that loss really? And even there, they were coming back, storming back in the second half, and were in a position where they could have potentially tied the game before it went south for them. So, I got to trust the record here and trust what I've seen. I've been able to see those Raiders a couple times this year. I just think they're a better team, better quarterback, better coach. Debatable, but early performance for the Raiders. I think they're somewhat legit, at least the way they've performed so far. So I like the Raiders in this matchup on Sunday, 27-20 over the Bears. And to be clear, again, Bears fans need to understand the priority here. I do not give a shit about the wins or losses this year. They go 5-12. I don't care. If they go 5-12 and Justin Fields shows that he can be that dude, then this year was a raging success. If this team wins a game like this on Sunday, but Justin Fields sucks, that is the worst possible outcome you could have. It's the worst. Maybe the Bears will be a little bit better off because now the team could really rally behind Justin Fields. Maybe there's a little bit of an uptick in the confidence of the roster because they say, oh, numbskull Nagy's not calling the plays anymore. We have a better chance. The offense has a better chance to succeed and work. It's hard to quantify those types of things right now. We could see a very much different looking Bears team coming up on Sunday afternoon in Las Vegas, but I think the Raiders are just a better team, and they're going to show that by winning on Sunday.